Yeah, there's a whole article attached to it. So this family is halfway to their $50,000 goal. It just is absurd.
That's wild.
An absurd amount of money. Where does it all go? So, like, you
Mm-hmm.
think about there is certainly travel expenses, and I feel like there's got to be like some. I would certainly hope that some of it goes to prenatal care.
I think so too, and probably postnatal stuff too, because giving birth, having a baby's expensive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how expensive it is in other countries, but it's
Yeah,
also dangerous.
it is dangerous.
Living life on the wild side, these birthers. Hey, y'all. She's Hannah.
He's Greg.
She's adopted.
He's not.
She's black.
He's not.
And this is the
The
Fake
Fake
Siblings
Siblings
Podcast. Growing up as adoptive siblings presented unique challenges.
That's not your real brother.
How long have you been dating? Ugh! The realness of our siblingship was often called into question, and we want to talk about it.
Because despite it all, we've always been super close.
And
ain't nothing fake about that.
Speaking of living life on the wild side, I told my man's George at Timber Trail Lodge
Okay.
that I would give him a shout out. He's got a vacation property up on Ely. He came and picked up me and wifey when we were caught in a dire is maybe a stretch, but an unsafe situation
Gotcha.
on a very large windy lake yesterday. He came and picked us up. He didn't charge us a dime. Just did it out of the goodness of his heart. So shout out to George. Thanks, George. Appreciate
Shout
you.
out George. And what did you say he has?
Timber Trail Lodge.
Timber Trail Lodge.
So, they do some dog sledding in the wintertime up on Ely side. So it's like 4 hours outside of Minneapolis. During the summer, you can certainly go up and stay in their little cabins. You have the lake and can swim and get out on boats and, all of the things. But yeah, it sounds like wintertime is really cool up there. That's when I think we're probably going to try to go up.
Sweet.
Do a little dog sledding.
All right, Joe.
George.
So put that on your plans.
Timber Trail Lodge.
All right.
Everybody loves a garage sale.
Everyone.
Minneapolites, don't you love your garage sales?
They do love garage sales out here.
I mean, y'all were out of town for the Bryn Mawr garage sale. We had the kids, and I thought like maybe we would go to the Bryn Mawr garage sale, and then completely blanked. That would have been like perfect activity for Saturday because it is.
True.
Have you been to the Bryn Mawr garage sale?
No, I just know that people don't play about their budgeting and stuff here. There's like a lot of like, oh, I got that for free in this place. Like that's a very like common like.
Oh yeah, I mean people ask me about my softball pants. I got pinstripe softball pants, and I'm like, got them for $2 at a yard sale, and they were labeled for $4. And I walked up and I said, "These are $4," and they go, "You can have them for $2." I wasn't even trying to barter. I just asked about the price, and they gave me half off.
Shout out to Minnesota.
Shout out to Bryn Mawr garage sale. But yeah, we missed it this year. Bummer. First weekend of May.
Okay, I didn't know. I haven't been, but yeah, they don't play about the garage sales.
I mean, it's that whole neighborhood. So you stop at a cup of Java, get yourself a breakfast sandwich and a coffee, and you walk around, and it's like you could spend a whole weekend there, and they do it for the whole weekend. They do it like I think Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
My friend Sierra put me onto the buy nothing thing. Buy nothing.
Is that
like a community thing where they have one? It's based geographically. It's like based off of your location, and it's a community where people just offer things to everyone, and then you don't have to spend any money.
I feel like I've seen that or looked at that at some point as well too.
I don't know if it's nationwide or what, but I had never heard of it until I moved here.
It's funny because one of my good friends, and I'm fairly certain that she has been listening. So shout out to Lizzie.
Mm-hmm.
But she's funny because she will like send me a message like anytime she sees something free that she like thinks that Claire and I could use or want. She like sends us a link. She's like, boom. And she's on it too. So Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, you name it. and she like looks at our neighborhood, she looks at her neighborhood. I don't know how many friends she's got on her like list, but I think it's just like a hobby, and
Probably.
it's amazing. So
Shout
thankful
out to
for you, Lizzie.
Lizzie. Yeah, no, it's a real thing. But they put me onto it, so I've actually reached out about getting some perennials.
Perennials.
Yeah, trying to build
Yeah, that garden.
our garden, our landscaping in the front and back.
Uh, Remind me what's a perennial and what's an annual? Perennials keep coming back.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, because
So
our
you're like,
first year I made the mistake of buying a whole bunch of annuals because I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I had some perennials, but mostly the annuals,
mm-hmm.
and so then they all die.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, I got some last year. Perennials like hostas and ferns and yeah, lots of shrubs, but also like black eyed Susans. Those are things that just keep coming back.
yeah.
Makes your landscaping a lot easier.
I'm trying to be more attuned to that as well. There's like, I think I've mentioned it to you before, this like movement called permaculture.
Hmm.
So like thinking about developing your property in a way that is just like a steward of the land, essentially.
Yeah.
So like thinking about, you have trees as a top canopy, you have a shorter tree, you have some like fruiting, some flowering,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, so that you have all of like this essentially environment in your yard that
Yeah.
or like that is welcoming to the um, the food chain.
Yeah.
You got bugs that pollinate, people, animals that eat bugs,
It's real.
animals that eat the animals that eat bugs, and
And so
it's
on and
like,
so forth.
yeah. We have some neighbors that have a yard that has like a patch of grass like this big, and then the rest of the yard is just like beautiful.
We have a bunch of those too around here.
And their little boulevard in between the sidewalk and the street is just all wildflowers, and it's like bursting with purple flowers right
I
now.
feel like my kids must have seen the house because they told me about it.
Yep.
Because they were like, when we drive,
We definitely
when we
walked
ride
past it
our
when
yeah,
they stayed with us.
when we ride our bikes around, we like to admire the curb appeal of our neighbors, and they were like, "There's this one house near us, we went to Claire that has the most beautiful garden." I said, "Okay, we'll have to go by there."
Yeah.
But yeah,
Please do.
yeah,
Please
we
come
will.
by. Knock
We
on
will.
the, or just walk in.
Fair enough.
You know what door's unlocked.
We do. We do. Okay.
So
yeah,
the reason that we're talking garage sales is because there's a feature on the news last week. Yeah,
yeah,
less than a week ago. It was last Tuesday, about a couple in South Minneapolis that had raised over $2,000 to go toward their adoption.
yeah.
Their adoption that will cost them a total of $50,000.
Yeah, $50,000 sounds like a lot of money for an adoption.
It does. I mean, so let's just like, should we like try to do the math for a second?
Well, okay. Let's start off with this. In 1992, when I was adopted, my adoption cost about $8,000.
Okay. Wow. So 30 years ago,
Yes.
your adoption cost
Plus for inflation.
$8,000
What's $8,000?
times 1.05 32 times. I like what it would be. What's the cost of inflation, or what's average inflation?
As it says, is equivalent to 17,000 today.
Okay. So then multiply that by 3. So what is that? I mean, there's got to be some amount of cost related to the travel of like from South Africa to
Okay, so
Minneapolis.
it's an international adoption.
It's an international adoption.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes on a bike.
Yeah.
With spikes or something like that.
I mean, that is.
Yeah, it's probably travel, and then it's yeah. But my fear whenever there's that much money involved, regardless, is like
you get this much, kind of just like money just slipping under the table.
Yeah, it just seems like it's a lot.
Like you got to pay off the right people to.
Like my friend, she's a birth mother, and she does a lot of like advocacy work with adoption, particularly around like unethical practices and private adoption.
Okay.
And one of the things that she talks about is with international adoption, or like this kind of enmeshment that happens between international and domestic adoption, where people fly in international women from other countries to have birth in America, and then place it's a different situation than this situation here. But
So it's like technically not an international adoption then, since the baby is born
I don't know.
in the
I'd have to say
States.
how. Yeah, I guess maybe that's what it
Feels
is.
like sex trafficking.
It is very trafficky.
Yeah.
She posted about it
It's
last week actually
giving
too.
sex trafficking.
No, for real. Hold on. Let me look it up. Okay, so it's a thing that's a practice. This is a little bit of a diversion, but it got brought up again last week, so it's kind of relevant to what in the world of adoption. Yes, Paul Peterson. He was accused of smuggling pregnant women from the Marshall Islands. Anyway, he got sentenced to 6 years in prison in Arkansas in 2020 because he said he was part of.
6 years?
Yeah,
That feels like
we're
nothing.
yeah, it says, okay. In 1983, there was a ruling that excluded the Marshall Islands citizens from entering the United States for adoption purposes. They are allowed to travel for the purposes of working or visiting. Pearson used this legal opening and charged couples $35,000 to adopt children from the islands, hired individuals to recruit pregnant women to give birth in the United States, then give their children up for adoption. In compensation, the women received $10,000 and the cost of travel. Some adoptive families denied being made aware that Pearson was paying the women involved, and many of the women claimed that the only medical care they received was during labor pains or while they were giving birth. Pearson illegally accessed state-funded medical benefits and falsified residency information to ensure medical care for the women, totaling nearly $814,000 in Arizona Medicaid funds.
Wow.
One adoptive couple who worked with Pearson went to a home that housed some of the women involved in the scheme. They later told investigators they believed the home was part of a baby mill, that they saw many women sleeping on mattresses on the floor. After the adoptions occurred, the birth mothers were either moved to Arkansas or returned to the Marshall Islands. Anyway, I bring this up because I feel like whenever I see that large of a sum of money, I get nervous about
Yeah.
the ethic the ethics behind the practices because it's just a
100%.
ton of money.
Yeah, which I mean, I feel like it makes sense then the adoptive agency they're talking about is All God's Children International. And all of these spots are like organizations. They're all .org. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like that's, feels like they're protected as these nonprofits.
The reality is, I just feel like there's such a lack of regulation as far as adoption is concerned, especially when it comes to private adoption, where it's just like it's kind of the environment that rewards or at least encourages bad actors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not blaming like this couple
No, 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 definitely
for
not.
I feel like these people are taking advantage of the people desiring to have children.
Right, these big organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all feels, I mean, when you look at price tags like that, it gets to feeling real icky.
Like when it comes to private adoption, when people want to adopt infants, there's just there's a supply and demand. There's a demand and supply issue where
Hmm.
there's a lot more demand than there is supply, and that also adds to like this.
Yeah. I mean, I also wonder because, sort of like right off the bat, you look at this All God's Children International page, and the picture on the front page is of there aren't any infants. So you wonder if if you're adopting infants from these folks, or if it's.
Oh yeah, they could be adopting children probably.
Mhm. Because this one specifically is talking about, you know, the orphan crisis and the 8 million, which feels honestly like a low number. Oh,
Yeah.
there are 8 million orphans living in institutions,
Wow.
is what they say.
I don't know, man. It's hard because I just feel like
It
ah.
is hard. And so actually, this actually brings up to me and reminds me of my missions trip
Mhm.
to Kenya. You remember this?
Yeah.
and we were our congregation was working with a pastor in Kenya, and we were sending over, I feel like, several $100s a month, and committed to doing it for a year. And then we sent an exploratory mission team over, and I was a part of that team. And you know, $500 a month goes a lot further in rural Kenya than it does here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got there, and the pastor that we were donating the money to was like adding on to his home.
Mm.
And he was like saying, this is the missionaries wing, and these are where we can house the children, but there were no children. And so
Mm.
then, like, the one day that we were there was going to be a day of feeding, and so we like put together this big meal, and some kids showed up, but it was like very unclear, you know, where those kids were coming from. And I feel like in a community like that, everybody is, I don't know, I can't make any sweeping judgments knowing very little about it. I was only there for a week, but we
Right.
left feeling like there were more questions than answers.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, without knowing, without being a part of the culture, how does one know who's an orphan, who has family, who's being cared for, or who is just like being taken advantage of?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing with international adoption in general that I just feel like is a slippery slope. And then also I feel like it's typically taking place in these countries that have been, typically colonially destabilized.
Yep.
And then it's like solving a problem that we created.
Yep.
It's just hairy.
Yeah. I mean, that's this, you mentioned it already, this late capitalistic world,
Yeah, where it's
right?
just like we've gone in, we meaning, the colonial superpowers have gone into these countries, created, conflict amongst the people themselves, or actually like came in and colonized and destabilized these
Yeah.
countries, and or going in and like, stripping the resources from the country and creating, you know even more severe impoverishment.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes for, again, an environment that's ripe for bad actors and for people to be taken advantage of and for people to be desperate. And if there's somebody coming in saying, I have all this money that will help you or your family, or, you know it trivializes the issues to blame the adopted parents, or blame even necessarily just like a one party. But I think that, like,
Which makes it all the more important to do all of the homework before, and it's hard because then you're playing on people's emotions and feelings, and getting, you want to adopt, and you get your hopes up about it, and I don't know, it's just,
yeah, and if you've formed some kind of attachment with the kid, and then it's like, oh, you have to pay more money. It's like people are probably going to be more likely to do that once they form an attachment with the kid than not. So then it's like, yeah, like you said, it's using people's, like, using pathos to swindle people. And then there's people who who get defrauded too, like people
right.
who, that was a big thing that's happened and continues to happen, where people will be, again, due to the supply and demand issue, it's like they will promise people more children than they have and then take their money and dip out.
Have any of you out there experienced any of this? Do you have anything to contribute?
Yeah, I mean,
Thoughts,
yeah,
questions, comments?
yeah. Yeah, it's a complicated issue. I mean, I know that mom and dad said they took out a home equity loan so they could adopt me. Like, it's a big financial undertaking. So I understand like the couple here doing a fundraiser or trying to use this garage sale to raise money to
Mm-hmm.
adopt a child, and then also there's a part of me as an adoptee, and I think there's another part of me as a human that's like, yikes, because there is something that's just icky about, yeah, first of all, the amount of money people are being asked to spend to adopt children. Number two, the just the exchange of money itself. Like, there is something icky about being a commodity,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, and it makes me think of like I don't know. It's like the inflation of like services provided. You think about, I mean, what's the cost of a major life event? And you think about all these people who go into major debt for their weddings. You
right,
know, you're getting married, and you tell somebody that you're getting married, and so the price magically doubles, right? And
yeah,
I feel like $50,000 is probably like pretty close to the average cost of a wedding. It might even be
mm,
more than that at this stage of the game. So it's like
probably,
if you just know of that people will pay that much for a significant life event. You know,
right,
I don't
right,
know. It's like it's kind of wild.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
maybe drawing comparisons that aren't there, but
yeah.
it
I don't
just
know if it's that
feels
expensive, but it is expensive. Like,
yeah. I remember that was like our goal. We will not go into debt for our wedding.
that wasn't a goal of ours, but we were just so broke that wasn't even an option to think
Yeah,
about going to that much debt.
had a cute little dinner.
We did. It was great. I'm very happy that we didn't go into any debt at all
Yeah,
for that.
yeah.
That feels
Again, it's like
ridiculous.
yeah, it really does. It's like we're trying to build a life together. Let's not start that life from behind.
But the thing is, it's just, and the thing is, the cost associated if you want to have children, and you're having infertility issues, you still would have to pay a crap ton of money if you want to do IVF
Mm-hmm.
or other kinds of
Yeah.
therapies. So it's just like,
The economy of vulnerability.
yeah,
Just like preying on folks' vulnerability.
it really is. And I also like, there is part of me that my heart sinks anytime there is like a global catastrophe. Like, I remember when
Mm-hmm.
we pulled out of Afghanistan, I was like, oh, there's going to be a bunch of Afghani children for adoption.
Well, right, and I
Because I feel like
was
people see that and they go like, the wrong people
yep.
who are opportunistic and see money everywhere, will see that and be like, destabilization. Let's go in there,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
and same with like what's happening now in Gaza and with Palestinian children.
Mm-hmm.
I, we already know there's a new acronym that was created for children who are surviving with no living family members.
Yeah. What is it?
WCNSF, which means Wounded Children with No Surviving Family. The fact that that even exists is like
Mm-hmm.
a signifier that,
Ickiness is at play. Got to scoop that kid up, save their life.
yeah, where it's like we could also just like not use our taxpayer money to bomb innocent civilians.
A valid point.
So like when I saw that, my first thought as an adoptee is like that those children are going to be. It depends on the government because some countries are a lot more protective of their own children and they want to do their best to keep people, not to disrupt
Mm-hmm.
their the children's lives with international adoption, which is a huge thing to do to someone. Which I think that sometimes as Americans, with our own ethnocentrism, can overlook that. There is an element of ethnocentrism in that we think that we're the most like they would be
Uh-huh.
obviously better off here,
Here.
and they would be obviously better off with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are some countries that get vilified for being more protective of their children, being like, no, we want to keep them here.
Yeah.
And because of our ethnocentrism and a number of other things, classism, anti-blackness, white supremacy, we have this thought that's like, why would you keep them in that country where they'll be suffering, when it's like it's deeper than just being
When
like
they could just suffer here.
when they,
I mean, this is interesting. In 2004, there were 23,000 adoptions, and since then, there's been a 90% decline.
I think that there's been more and more criticism about it, and a lot also I think with the age of information, more and more coming out about people and like international agencies being corrupt. So people like
Yeah.
finding out, because I know like there have been a number of people that I know in my own network of adoptees who have later found out that their parents were told that they had died, or were told that they were being sent to America to be educated and then would be returned home, like were lied to or misled, or like taken advantage of, or because of language barriers were not fully aware of what they were signing, or what they, like they're being told they're going to get this amount of money, but they don't really understand
What they're getting paid
what they're
for.
getting paid for. So I think that with the internet, the onset of the age of the information age, people are able to tell their stories now, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's making us more critical about international adoption, making us more critical of closed adoption, all these things that were more standard practice
Yeah.
30 years ago, 40
Yeah.
years ago.
That's good.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. I mean, I know that like when like our eldest brother Tyler was adopted from Korea, and there was like a it was again another thing where it was like this big amount of orphans children at that particular time. I can't remember what was occurring at the same time in the 80s. It was when was the Korean War?
I feel like prior.
Yeah, I thought so too.
It is interesting that the first. So I typed in.
Ah, okay, hold on. Sorry, finish.
No, I just like typed in Korean adoption 1986 on Google, and the first thing that pops up is adoption reunion registry.
Yeah,
I mean, this business just runs deep.
it sure does. Well, I mean that has to do with adoptees now trying to
Sure.
reunite.
And I mean, yes, and no shade on that, but
Yeah.
there's also now adopted.com is
Mhm.
offering a reunion registry and
Yep.
getting all the funding for that.
Okay, here it says in the 1970s and 80s, it says industrialization and urbanization in the 1960s and 70s post-war saw a change in many attitudes, including increased divorce rates and teen pregnancies.
In
Unlike,
Korea.
yeah,
Huh.
unlike the period immediately following the Korean War, where most adopted children were orphans who or had been abandoned, the majority of children sent for adoption during the 70s and 80s were born to single mothers and poor working class backgrounds. Women were not paid for giving up their babies. They were often housed until the baby's birth and had their medical expenses covered. So yeah, it says approximately 90% of all children sent for adoption were born to unwed mothers.
Hmm.
So it sounds like it was just social stigma.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a rabbit hole. But I just I think that there's like this. I guess what I was trying to say with that is I feel like there's an element of societal circumstance paired with like desperation on both ends,
hmm
and then like just some exploitative party willing to sell a solution to both sides.
If I wanted to make my millions, I would probably just and no morals were involved. Could just be a crooked middleman somewhere.
You could.
Just gotta find the right niche.
Yeah. I mean, even to take it one step further, I mean, even sometimes struggle with the work that I do, because I still feel like there is a way in which I know is not true, and I'm sure you're gonna tell me it's not. But I feel like
Who, them or me?
you, but them too. But basically, I feel like sometimes I even struggle with like the moral dilemma that is like commodifying. Am I further
Hmm.
commodifying myself and my trauma and making it into a product or a service in order to like am I still contributing to the same kind of machine that
I think not the same machine.
not the same one, but it's like I think maybe that's just what capitalism does, and that's like you kind of have to
Mm.
modify yourself and your labor and your life.
I think that there's something to that. And I mean, I hear you because contributing to the economy of adoption is obviously a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it's also important for somebody from your perspective
Yeah.
to be able to offer the do's and don'ts and the, I don't know, you're providing resources for families and children who are involved. So
Yeah.
I think it's less about that you're perpetuating. I think it's more that I think you're doing education that is both reactive but also hopefully proactive too.
Yes, that's the goal. And also, I'm very honestly probably would be a lot wiser to be more motivated by money than I am, but
Mm-hmm.
not at all.
Mm-hmm.
So
Connection.
yeah. So yeah, I think that's I guess to bring it maybe a little bit full circle of like the why I think seeing news stories like this one that inspired our conversation today about the Minnesotan couple using the yard sale to pay for their adoption is just like there's something about the exchange of funds in
Mm-hmm.
adoption that just it's as an adoptee, and I know I'm not alone in feeling this way, is just icky.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really struck me in the article is that in that line that was like in 2004 there were 23,000 international adoptions. Since then they've decreased by 90%. This family is hoping to be the change was the next line. It's
Mm,
like I don't think that the change is to ramp back up international adoptions, and I hope that maybe in some ways that this author, this journalist, maybe wants to do a little bit of digging
yeah,
and figure out why that number has changed, and that maybe actually being a part of the change and trying to bring that number back up is like, I mean, know that that is not the goal.
yeah. I think that the practice of old has just been that like that's has just been giving adoption as practice like just kind of assumed benevolence. It seems like the the narrative still tends to be. I mean, even the fact that this is the major local news source of Minnesota saying they hope to change, like the
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming popular narrative is still very
Yeah.
complimentary
Yeah.
towards people who are the least impacted.
So what would your call to action be?
I always joke that I'm gonna write a book about adoption that's called "Don't How to Adopt and What to Do After You've Already Done It."
Don't.
Yeah, don't. Um, and I know that just because I know that it would make people upset. The
Rabble rouse, Hannah.
yes,
Do it.
what's that called? The contrarian that I am.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that'd be hilarious. Just to troll people. But the reason why I say that is I think that adoption is a band aid kind of love solution to like a huge amalgamation of so many of society's problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that we should adopt ever or that it's terrible, but I think that if you're willing to spend so much money to benefit from the destabilization of people's communities, my call to action for those people is like, what are you doing then to? I think that there should be like a restorative justice practice that should follow that, because you should be working to. I think that's a work. I think it would speak to your appreciation and gratitude for the communities responsible for the children that you are so lucky to have in your home. Um, so I think that there has to be like kind of a restorative justice practice that then would follow your benefiting from their harm.
Yeah, don't just adopt from South Africa because you love the culture.
Like you should be doing something then, as I think, for the rest of your lives to ensure that less and less children have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you really love that
If you really
culture,
love that culture and love that
yeah.
child, and yeah,
How can you ensure that that culture stays intact?
yeah, that would be my call to action. I mean, that's complicated, but I don't do anything not complicated, so.
Yeah. We are speaking to Hannah Matthews, author of Don't,
How to
an
adopt.
adoptee's guide on how to adopt.
Don't. How to adopt and what to do after you've already messed up.
Hannah, thank you for your time today.
No worries.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Fake Siblings podcast. And before you shut this off, we have a few simple requests.
1. Subscribe to the pod. B. Leave us a glowing review. 3rd, follow us on all the socials at Fake Siblings Pod.
We release new episodes every Wednesday, so until next time.
Thank you for listening.
Bye, y'all.
Any desire to call Tyler, get his take?
On what? On $50,000 for an international adoption, or what? Just
Sure.
we can. I don't know what he'd say. I guess that's why you call him. I guess.
Holy shit.
Probably.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
He'd be like, yeah.
That makes sense.
He'll probably have some kind of really obscure context that we don't have.
Yeah.
Because that's who Tyler is. He just knows obscure things.